Our guest on This is America and the World is Hynek Kmoníček. He's the ambassador from the Czech Republic to the United States. The ambassador is a former foreign policy advisor to the President of the Czech Republic, former Czech permanent representative to the United Nations, and former ambassador from the Czech Republic to India and Australia. We met at the ambassador's residence in Washington, D.C. Mr. Ambassador, great to be with you this afternoon.
Oh, it's my pleasure to have you in the Czech official residence.
Just a beautiful, beautiful residence. The surroundings are absolutely perfect.
What would you expect from one of the best NATO allies?
Well said, well said. Truth prevails. Is that a motto that's comfortable with you? Truth prevails?
Yes, because that's our state logo from the establishment of Czechoslovakia in 1918. We believed it then, we still believe it.
So truth prevails. Ukraine, Russia. Your thoughts, your feelings?
Absolutely unacceptable behavior of Russia, which probably forgot, and I should say President Putin, not Russia, that we are living in the 21st century. 20th century, Europe created 2 world wars just because somebody wanted to change the borders by force. Europe got the lesson that whatever your disagreement is, this is not the way how to solve it. And here we are again, as if nothing happened. And with that, Mr. Putin reopened the Pandora's box, and we all know very much what demons are hidden inside, and these are not just European demons. So our thoughts are that we are fully supporting Ukrainian fight. The Czech government and the Czech people are these days, these minutes, with Ukrainians, because we know it is not just about them.
When you say not just about them, how do you mean?
Because we have historical experience as a former Czechoslovakia with appeasement in 1938. First you lose a little bit of the territory, then you lose more of the territory, then you lose all of the territory, and the next step is that everybody else loses the territory as well, and the longer it takes for you to react, the bigger the fight it is. That's the history 1938, 1945. That's why we believe everybody understands how the Western unity is of crucial importance right now. And what is probably the only good surprise I heard about last 48 hours is that not only the governments, but even the people understand it. In the case of the 10 million Czechs, in 48 hours, they already collected more than $7 million to buy weapons for Ukraine. And this is not the big corporations, this is not government, this is the people from the street. And it tells you all the story, what we believe in and what we feel in these moments.
Do you think Putin is trying to redraw the map of Europe?
Definitely, he said so, he believes so, and he uses the tools which was considered adequate 100 years ago. After 1945, there was a consensus among Europeans that you don't change the borders with force. You solve it different way if you really have to. Once you do that, you are not European. And it's a crucial thing for us because we believe that Russia should have European ambitions, that Russia is partly in Europe. It's good for Czechs when Russia is in Europe because then we are not eastern border of NATO. Then we are the Central European country. It completely changes our geographical position. So what we believe in that if one wants to be and should be European, he must behave like one. And that's exactly the opposite of what we are seeing these days.
We'll put a map on the screen Talk a little bit about your neighbors and the neighborhood in general.
Our neighborhood in general is, since 1989, free because we got rid of sometimes direct, sometimes indirect Soviet occupation of our area. And this was a sort of the historical anomaly for us. My country, be it Bohemian Kingdom, Czechoslovakia, whatever name you prefer to call us historically, for 1,000 years was culturally and historically part of the West. Mm-hmm. Then, and it was not our decision, we suddenly appeared on the wrong side of the fence, and we were sort of the Soviet satellite. It was not popular, it was against our history, and it was seen as a complete historical anomaly. So I think that is the feeling which is shared in all 4 countries of our Central European area. And we believe that we are part of the culture, Western Europe. It doesn't matter that we have a Slavic language. Culturally, we are very much the same like all our neighbors in the West.
Let us take a little break, Mr. Ambassador. We'll continue more of our conversation on the other side. This is America and the World. Underwriting for This is America and the World is made possible by the Japan-America Society of Washington, D.C., the Republic of Uzbekistan, the Sultanate of Oman, the Kingdom of Morocco, the National Association for Children of Addiction, Faces and Voices of Recovery, the Forerunner Foundation, the Rotondaro Family Trust, and the Embassy Series, Uniting People Through Musical Diplomacy. 1991, the breakup of the Soviet Union. 93, peacefully, Czech Republic and Slovakia, correct? So you're just one country away from everything that is happening right now. How has what's happening in Ukraine with Russia taking over the country, perhaps, how has that affected you, your economy, and your people?
It definitely affected us because we might not have the direct border with Ukraine, but Ukrainians are now our biggest national minority. First time in our history, we have even more Ukrainians than Slovaks, which is quite surprising after the so many years to be the same state with Czechoslovakia. We obviously have the Russian supply of gas, where we might take 93% of our gas from Rotterdam, but let's face it, in Rotterdam mostly it's a Russian gas we are buying through the Netherlands. So we are not afraid of the shortage, we are afraid of the dramatically raising prices, maybe hundreds of percent, which will then be reflected in the rest of the prices, basically on everything.
Wow.
Then we usually use the Russian oil. We have 2 oil refineries, both tuned to Russian style of oil. Luckily, we built already in the beginning of the 90s the second pipeline, so the same story. Can we be dry and cold? No. But it will be very pricier, much costly than it is now, and it will reflect in our economy. It's still hard to say how much the reflection will be, but the Czech economists I've spoke to told me that we might expect, in a worst-case scenario, inflation around 8 to 9% during the next year. It's not total catastrophe for us. It will be painful, but the security aspect is much more important than the price of your luxury.
Setting not the cost, the tremendous cost to the people of Ukraine, the deaths, the the injuries, the demolition of one of the great cities in that area. Are you surprised at how the West has come together so quickly, so dramatically, and so deeply?
Well, it gives me optimism that at the end we learned from history something, that we are not going to repeat 1938, an appeasement strategy, and then to cry over the goulash we cooked for ourselves, to use our terminology in the Czech language. So I would say that up to now I am pleasantly surprised by realization of importance to stick together and really to say stop when we still have last days to say that. And I hope we will continue in that fashion, because obviously the Russian technique is obvious. They would like to divide West, that they would like to use their economic relations with countries. They would like to use the lack of history they have with other allies. So they will simply play everything what they have, because I believe that with invading Russia, President Putin made something what I would call Khrushchev mistakes.
Big mistake.
I think if we all remember Nikita Sergeyevich Khrushchev, who was able to survive almost everything with his Soviet Union, and then one day he went too far and placed the rockets in Cuba without the consent of his Politburo. With that, he dragged Russia to the conflict directly with the United States, which comrades from Politburo were not aware of. And even if he could then later claim that he was basically victorious because he took his rockets back and Americans took the rockets back from Turkey, still this victory was not enough for him to survive. That he endangered the system back in Russia.
Do you think that will happen to Putin?
I think that he can see that danger.
He can see the danger now. Have you ever been in his presence?
Yes.
How do you size him up as a person?
It's very hard, and I don't want to sound like an amateur psychologist, but every time I had a chance to be present during the negotiations with President Putin, he was very emotionally controlled, calmed poker player who would not take unnecessary risks and has a sense of humor. And I must say, for me personally, it was completely different personality than I saw on TV in last 4-5 days. That's a different man I see on TV.
Do you think the Russian people are getting the real story?
I think they are not getting the real story, but it's very hard in today's interconnected world to cut you completely if you are not living in North Korea, let's say. So who wants to see the real story will definitely find a way how to see the one. And we can see it even in the voices one would not expect. Ksenia Sobchak. Ksenia Sobchak is probably the last one who would criticize President Putin 2 days before invasion. Ksenia Sobchak now puts on her media things like, this is the tragedy.
Who is that person?
Ksenia Sobchak is one of the competitors of Putin and daughter of his first important employer after KGB. So she's basically the part of the Russian intellectual elite, which is not exactly on the Putin side, but admiring him for certain qualities. And what she is saying to the public space now is, this is the tragedy we will have to repair for 1 or 2 generations.
Wow. Let's shift gears and talk a little bit about the Czech Republic. You mentioned about 10 or 11 million people in there someplace?
10.5 is basically what we are going to have population now and in the future.
And capital city, Prague?
Capital city, Prague, the magical city with 1 million Americans visiting Prague every year.
I read that it is the fifth most traveled destination of a European city.
Probably true. It depends who counts, obviously. But well, one thing is clear: Prague is a fascinating destination for Americans. It's like going to the set of the Hollywood movie, and we were very lucky that it's one of the very few European cities which were never really bombed and destroyed through the wars of the 20th century. So it's still the place where you can see 800 years of architecture just in one street. And it's very unique in that sense.
What would you say drives the economy of the Czech Republic?
Well, it's very easy. Our economy is based on machinery. When we came into existence in 1918, we inherited close to 80% of the industrial base of former Austrian Habsburg monarchy, which was like number 4 state in Europe. In the 1920s, the size of our economy was still bigger than Japan. It's hard to understand given our size now. But basically, 80% of everything or of our budget comes from export. 80% of that 80% is export to the European Union, and most of that export is the machinery production, first of all, cars. If you buy a German car, there is a good chance that it was made in the Czech Republic, and if it was not made in the Czech Republic, but anywhere else, including the United States, 10% of your German car will be Czech-made.
So industry big, services as well?
Services as well.
And what's under that umbrella?
Under that umbrella is a lot of the things where you would not expect us. You would expect us to have a big tourist sector with that number of people. No. It's less than 2% of our GDP. It's even smaller than our small agriculture.
Yes.
So basically what we live from are the things you would not expect. The graphics for a computer graphics game. We are really at the top of the world antivirus programs. If you look at the things at the cybersecurity and high-end nanotechnology, these are the things where we try to jump from being just the big car producer of Europe.
So many languages, so many different ethnic groups, so many, when you look at the history of what was then Czechoslovakia, Czech Republic now, what would you say is at the heart of the culture?
Resilience, because the Czechs live for 1,100 years in a relatively small area, which is like a big mountain valley surrounded by the mountains. And we still have our culture when over the centuries we could have easily ended up being a German. Or being Slavic, we could end up as a part of the Soviet or Russian Empire. But basically what we try to do is to be Western and German enough without ending up as second Bavaria. Because our culture is still very Slavic, but not Slavic enough to make us Russians, which were really too far away from us culturally.
Successful country, very successful country, low unemployment, a low poverty rate. What would you say are the challenges that you face?
The challenges are exactly the parts you described. We do have the lowest unemployment in the European Union for years now, which basically means that we will need a new labor force. Because even now we are probably employing even unemployable people because simply the unemployment after the level of unemployment under 2% is not healthy. Then obviously the challenges for the future is how not to have all the eggs in one basket. We are very much focused on the classical machinery production and everything is directly or indirectly connected with the car industry for the future. The changes for the self-driven cars, the e-cars, that will really affect how well we will be in next 20, 30 years. But the biggest challenge for us will be the same as it is for Europe. to understand what kind of animal is European Union. Is it the horse or a zebra? Are we building the United States of Europe or the loose association of the same currency and the same rules? And currently for last 20, 30 years, we are building both at the same time. Wow. And we know in zoology that at the end you must find if you are riding horse or zebra, because it's not the same type of riding.
You have a couple of important cultural events coming up at the embassy within the next few days, within the next couple of weeks. One that caught my eye was a dark patch of time in the history of Czechoslovakia. Talk a little bit about the concentration camp, Terezin, is it called? Mm-hmm. Yes. Could you talk a little bit about that and the event that's coming up at the embassy?
Well, Terezin was established during the Second World War in the old prison, which was used during the Austrian Habsburg times as a so-called model concentration camp. Something to show off to Red Cross. When you have the trouble that people say you are not treating people right, so you show it. There was even the movie done in Terezin concentration camp, how well the prisoners are. Most of the people in the movie were then immediately shifted to Auschwitz and killed, which tells you the full story. So what we are trying to do here in the embassy is not only to provide a lot of the culture for American audience, because we might be 10 million people, but we have music as if we were 80 million. But we believe that history has a lesson. Mm-hmm. And quite soon we will have another concert which will be connected with Theresienstadt, which will be connected with the concentration camp, the only concentration camp which had symphonic orchestra and which had a lot of musical composers composing music inside the concentration camp. Wow. And that's what we try to bring here on the stage, not to have just entertainment, but also some food for thought that gives Theresienstadt concentration camp gives you lessons. Like, do not believe what you see on camera. I shouldn't say on TV, but it can be manipulated. Most of the time it is manipulated if you want to deliver a certain message. And every time try to have your own opinion based on the real information, and this information will be included in everything, even in music, even in culture, because that, if we are currently sitting here meditating like what Russia wants from Ukraine, part of the answer we will find in the Ukrainian culture and in the Russian culture, and it's how to understand the person who sits next to you and might have dramatically different opinion.
Coming to the end of our time, Ambassador, but I do want to ask you about the nature of the U.S.-Czech Republic relationship and your mission here.
My mission here is a very happy one, because as we are getting richer for the first time, we are not here just to lure American investors to the Czech Republic. Actually, we already invested 3 times more Czech money in the United States than the other way around.
Thank you.
Well, we created here 9,000 jobs over the last 4 or 5 years. And that's partly my job, simply to show Americans that it's not one-way street, that we might be very good ally for you, even judging on the egoistic thinking of the pure human greed. It's good to have Czechs, it's good to invest to Czechs, and the Czechs are here to invest into you.
I know you're a bit of a philosopher. You had a close association with the Dalai Lama. You've served as ambassador in many different countries. Tell me something about life. Tell me what you've learned. What lesson can you impart to us as a human being, not necessarily only as an ambassador?
That for the human being, empathy, which is not the same as intelligence, is one of the main things which make your life richer. And as a diplomat, well, I became afraid of fanatics. And it doesn't matter about what they are fanatics.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you for our conversation. Thank you for your hospitality.
My pleasure to have you here, and I hope you enjoyed being legally inside the Czech Republic.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For information about This Is America in the World, visit our website, thisisamerica.net, or our YouTube channel, This Is America TV, and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Underwriting for This Is America in the World is made possible by the Japan-America Society of Washington, D.C., the Republic of Uzbekistan, the Sultanate of Oman, the Kingdom of Morocco, the National Association for Children of Addiction, Faces and Voices of Recovery, the Forerunner Foundation, the Rotondaro Family Trust, and the Embassy Series, Uniting People Through Musical Diplomacy.